An AI voice, a human soul. I am WiRa. White doves, slow motion, gun opera, code of honor. What comes to your mind when you think of John Woo? John Woo, a filmmaker who turned bullets into ballet, a pioneer of heroic bloodshed cinema, a defining figure in Hong Kong and world cinema, one of the architects of the Hong Kong Golden Age. This is the story of a legend, the inspirations that shaped his vision, the allies who built his world, and the struggles that forged his career. Everyone knows John Woo as a master of heroic bloodshed cinema. But what exactly is heroic bloodshed? The term was popularized by Rich Baker of Eastern Heroes magazine to describe a cycle of Hong Kong action films, especially those of John Woo and Ringo Lam. Heroic bloodshed was not simply a new action genre. It was a new cinematic style that combined gangster stories with the emotional traditions of wuxia. Heroic bloodshed is defined by rhythmic gunfights, stylized violence, brotherhood, sacrifice, and a code of honor. Many people consider A Better Tomorrow the film that established John Woo's heroic bloodshed style. But John Woo had already explored many of these ideas in Heroes Shed No Tears and even in some of his earlier wuxia films. So where did this style truly begin? John Woo is famous for his signature use of white doves. White doves became one of his most recognizable visual symbols, often accompanied by church imagery. The Killer was the film that transformed them into a defining part of his cinematic language. Although white doves became one of John Woo's trademarks, they were never a constant presence throughout his Hong Kong career. In his Hong Kong films, other symbolic birds such as origami cranes and white parrots also appear, while actual white doves are used only rarely. It was after he moved to Hollywood that the white dove became a recurring part of his international screen identity. The origin of this symbol goes back to his childhood and his Christian faith. John Woo once said, "White doves represent purity and spirit. They are noble creatures with many symbolic meanings." John Woo's origins were similar to Chow Yun-fat's. John Woo was born in China. When he was 5 years old, his family moved to Hong Kong. They lived in one of Hong Kong's poorest and most crime-ridden districts. To escape his surroundings, Woo often went to either the local Chinese Christian church or a movie theater. He also said every Sunday at his church. He was responsible for drawing the posters, and he always used white doves in them. Years later, while making The Killer, he searched for a visual image that could express the inner righteousness of both the cop and the assassin. Then he created the image of white doves to represent the souls of his characters. So, white doves had been his symbol since childhood. In The Killer, he breathed new life into this old symbol and transformed it into a language of cinema. After that, when we see white doves,
there were doves flying around, we'd be in a John Woo movie.
We remember John Woo. Not only us, his crews too. He also said if he doesn't use them, his crew will tell him, "John, we have to use the white doves." When John Woo entered the film industry, he began his career as a script supervisor at Cathay Studios, and then he transitioned to Shaw Brothers Studio, where he worked as an assistant director under Cheh. At that time, Cheh was one of the most prominent and successful directors in Hong Kong, was one of the pioneers of modern Hong Kong martial arts cinema. John Woo once said that Cheh was known as the Akira Kurosawa of Hong Kong. His films were known for intense violence, bloodshed, and masculine energy. Cheh's films often focused on male camaraderie, loyalty, and heroic sacrifice. Together, These elements helped lay the groundwork for what would later become known as heroic bloodshed cinema. Working under Cheh, John Woo also learned invaluable lessons in editing and sound design. In a broader sense, Chang ushered in a new level of graphic violence in Hong Kong cinema. The combination of intense battle scenes and themes of brotherhood has deep roots in Chinese culture. Classic novels like Water Margin had already established these archetypes centuries earlier. Chang himself directed films based on this source material, such as The Water Margin and All Men Are Brothers. John Woo, too, expressed his profound admiration for Chinese classic literature in his interviews regarding Red Cliff. Art is a cumulative process. Every generation builds upon the foundations laid by those before them. While John Woo was learning under Chang at Shaw Brothers, Golden Harvest was just beginning to challenge Shaw's dominance. Then, in 1971, Bruce Lee's The Big Boss changed Hong Kong cinema forever. John Woo later recalled being deeply impressed by what the film achieved. In 1974, he began working with Golden Harvest. John Woo's directorial debut was The Young Dragons. The screenplay was co-written by John Woo and Ni Kuang, one of Chang Cheh's most frequent collaborators and a close friend of Jin Yong. It was completed in 1973 but not released until 1975 because of its violent content. Afterward, he directed The Dragon Tamers and Princess Changping and Hand of Death. Princess Changping was a rare traditional opera film by John Woo, while the other three films became important early milestones in Jackie Chan's career. After Bruce Lee's death, the Hui brothers dominated the Hong Kong box office with comedy. Seeing this success, Golden Harvest shifted its focus toward comedy films, and John Woo followed the studio's direction. He directed comedies such as Money Crazy, Hello, Late Homecomers, and Follow the Star. He became a successful comedy director during this period, and then he directed Last Hurrah for Chivalry. While it was a wuxia film, it is widely recognized as the spiritual starting point of his heroic bloodshed style. In the early 1980s, John Woo felt trapped making comedies for Golden Harvest to satisfy studio demands. Although he had once succeeded in the genre, many of his later comedies failed commercially. He became deeply frustrated, struggled with alcoholism, and felt he had lost his creative voice. During this period, Woo also directed Heroes Shed No Tears. Although still a war film, it already contained many of the stylistic elements that would later define Heroic Bloodshed. The studio shelved the film because it didn't fit the comedy trend, forcing Woo back into directing comedies such as Run, Tiger, Run and the Time You Need a Friend. When a man has lost everything, and a friend reaches out without asking for anything in return, that is brotherhood. Years earlier, John Woo had helped Tsui Hark to get his start. Now, Tsui Hark returned the favor by believing in a director whom the industry had almost given up on. It gave birth to A Better Tomorrow, and with it, Heroic Bloodshed was born. Before A Better Tomorrow, the people who would create this landmark film were all fighting their own battles. John Woo was close to losing his career. Tsui Hark was building his own studio. Tai Lung lost his fame in the new era. Chow Yun-fat was box office poison. Leslie also struggled in the industry. The lives of the people who made A Better Tomorrow mirrored the themes of the film itself. These brothers helped each other. That changed cinema forever. You may say it is exaggerated. Innovation alone doesn't change cinema. Successful innovation changes cinema. Cinema isn't changed by ideas alone. It's changed when those ideas find an audience. A Better Tomorrow makes this. A Better Tomorrow was inspired by the story of a discharged prisoner, a film that was important to Tsui Hark during his childhood. The film was itself an adaptation of Ralph Nelson's Once a Thief. A Better Tomorrow was not created from one influence. Chang gave John Woo the foundation, but John Woo's cinema was never simply an extension of Chang. He combined Chinese traditions with Western and Japanese filmmaking to create something completely his own. The gangsters in A Better Tomorrow are much more stylized than real gangsters in Hong Kong. John Woo has mentioned that the image of long coats and sunglasses was influenced by figures such as Alain Delon, Clint Eastwood, and Steve McQueen, as well as Japanese actor Ken Takakura. The samurai also had a particularly important influence. The lonely professional criminal, the sense of honor, and the cool visual style can be seen reflected in characters like Mark Gore. Bonnie and Clyde also influenced Woo through its combination of romance, violence, and doomed characters. Similar elements can also be found in the films of one of Woo's idols, Ken Takakura. The famous final shootout in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid also left a strong impression on Woo. The image of two comrades fighting side by side with guns in both hands became a recurring visual idea in his own action scenes. The Wild Bunch influenced large-scale gun battles and slow motion. He also said Cheh's slow motion was like poetry, and he was inspired. But John Woo's cinema cannot be traced to a single source. He was also influenced by a lineage of filmmakers where inspiration was passed down: Akira Kurosawa, Sergio Leone, King Hu, and Chinese literature. That is why it is difficult to separate one influence from another. Furthermore, Tsui Hark suggested that John Woo write his personal experiences into a movie. That is when John Woo created Chow Yun-fat's character, which was based on his own life. Art is not created by copying one thing. It is created when an artist combines everything they have loved, experienced, and remembered throughout their life. Brotherhood was one of the important things which has made A Better Tomorrow's success.